I wanted to talk with you today about secrets. Secrets, we've all got them. And I don't just mean dark, dirty secrets. I'm talking about legitimate secrets. I mean, there are some things that everybody just doesn't need to know. There are some things that just aren't everybody's business. You got to be careful who you tell certain things to. You can tell somebody something that is very meaningful to you, and the right kind of friend will use that wisely. They'll keep it confidential. They'll discuss it with you and only with you. The wrong person is not going to tell anybody in the world your secret except for their wife when they get home. And their wife's not going to tell anybody except for her very best friend who never breathes a word to anybody. And that best friend won't tell a soul except for her sister-in-law over coffee the next day. I'm telling you, you got to be careful with your secrets. And the actual title of today's message is Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Don't ask, don't tell. And I'm not using that phrase in the way we've heard it used in recent years. I mean it just as it sounds. There are some things that we simply have no business asking other people because it's not our business. There are some things they should not ask us because it's not their business. It has nothing whatsoever to do with their lives. And more importantly, there are things you don't tell. There are things you don't tell to just anybody. But how do you know when to tell? How do you know who is okay to tell? How do you know when you should ask and when you shouldn't? I hope to give some of those answers today as we go along by looking at the story of a man who had a big secret. It was a secret so secretive that the only people who knew it were his mother, his father, and himself. And the only reason he knew this secret was that his mother and father had whispered it to him. It was a tight-lipped secret. Verse 5, For behold, you shall conceive and give birth to a son, and no razor shall come upon his head. For the boy shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel from the hands of the Philistines. Now verse 24 and 25. Then the woman gave birth to a son and named him Samson. And the child grew up, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him. The Spirit of the Lord began to stir him. This child, Samson, was a Nazarite, not a Nazarene. That had to do with a town you were from. Nazarite had to do with a special calling God placed on your life. Samson was not the only person in the Old Testament or New who took on a Nazarite vow. It was not common because only the most dedicated people took on these vows. People who had some very clear purpose, and they needed to keep themselves pure. They had to keep their minds straight and fixed on the work God had for them to do. Now, oftentimes, a Nazirite vow was something you would keep for a set period of time, a month, 6 months, a year. And during that time, you let your hair grow. And that was the sign to people that you'd taken on this Nazirite vow. And so if you went to their home, they were not going to offer you a glass of wine. They were not going to expose you to the wrong kind of meat. They were going to respect your vows, is what I'm saying. Sometimes it was a temporary thing, but for a few people, it was lifelong. You know, most of you know, Samson was one of those. Also, John the Baptist apparently had taken a Nazirite vow. So did the prophet Samuel, and quite possibly Elijah the prophet. And in each case, they had the long hair. But also in each case, what came with that vow, symbolized by the long hair, was some special gift from God. Some unique power. For John the Baptist, it was preaching. For Samuel, it was the ability, the unusual, amazing ability to hear from God. For Elijah, it was the working of miracles. For Samson, though, it was his great strength. But have you ever thought of this? Nobody, in spite of this, nobody, even among the Israelites, actually knew that there was a connection between the Nazirite vow, symbolized by the long hair, and his great strength. Nobody knew that. Now, they knew he had taken a Nazirite vow. They knew he had great strength, but they never put two and two together. Not even his own people. It wasn't something that was advertised. That's why the Philistines had such a hard time finding out the secret of his strength. They had to do a lot of asking before somebody finally told. It was one of those secrets that nobody else needed to know. It was between Samson and his God. And the Bible says the Spirit of God began to stir him. That's the passage we read just a minute ago, verse 25 of chapter 13. The Spirit of God began to stir him. Do you know what it's like when the Spirit of God begins to stir you? Sometimes in your spiritual life, do you feel like a can of paint that's been sitting on the shelf for 2.5 years? And you're not in any kind of shape to be opened up and immediately used. You got to be shaken up, perhaps violently shaken up. You got to be stirred up. And God will always begin stirring you up when he's getting ready to do something new and big in your life. Sometimes it can be a very unpleasant stirring. Most of the time, I might go so far as to say it's unpleasant. Samson was stirred. Then we come to chapter 13 and verse 18. One more little hint about this secretive thing. It was so secretive that the angel who came telling the secret would not even tell his name, wouldn't identify himself. When this angel came to Samson's parents, they said, "Who are you?" And the angel of the Lord said to him, "Why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful?" Some translation says, "Why do you ask my name? It's too wonderful for you to understand." Do you know what I mean when I say there are some things so sacred so personally sacred to you as an individual that nobody else could possibly appreciate them? Something, some memory, or maybe even some object that you cherish from a time in your life that was very meaningful. It has spiritual significance to you, but to anybody else, it's just a vase. It's just an old, worn-out looking teddy bear. The significance is impossible for anybody else to understand. But you know what it is. And when you've got something like that, I'll just throw in one little hint. You don't have to try to explain that to people. I've found that at times when something is very meaningful to me personally, and I try to talk about it to other people who weren't there when it was all happening, who don't know the significance, I tell them, and it's almost like I've thrown my pearls before swine. I've, not to insult the people, but I've shared things that they couldn't possibly appreciate. There are things like that in your life. Things that are secret. Now, I got to quickly flip around and say there's a whole lot of other things that are not to be secret. One of them is your faith in Christ. Isn't it something how some of us keep the wrong things secret and we blab? Well, how would I say this? We blab the wrong things and we keep the right things a secret. Very secretive about a commitment to Christ. I mean, I actually don't want to get too public with that. I mean, somebody might misunderstand. I mean, what would they think of me? I'm not going to talk about that openly. And that very same person who can't talk about Christ openly can sure talk about you openly. And they can talk about the latest scandal very openly. It's important to know what to share, what not to share. The gospel is one of those things that's not meant to be a secret. Samson's strength, though, that was to be a secret. Now we come to chapter 14. Chapter 14, verses 1, 2, and 3. This is where we find Samson beginning to have problems with this whole don't ask, don't tell thing. This blabbing of information that should have been kept secret. Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. So he came back and told his father and mother, I saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. Now, therefore, get her for me as a wife. Then his father and mother said to him, is there no woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all your people that you go to take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she looks good to me. Why did they have a problem with him marrying this Philistine? Well, there's a whole lot of reasons. Culturally, they were totally different. Spiritually, they were completely different. But there was even a hidden thing, almost a secret thing. It's this. She was a Philistine, one of the very people Samson had been sent here to deal with and deliver his own people from, and he was going to marry her, and he had this secret. Do you see a problem on the horizon? If you don't already see it, let me spell it out. Once you get married, you discover the other's secrets. We can keep a whole lot of things secret when we're dating, and we do. And maybe it's necessary. Otherwise, nobody would ever marry us. But you marry somebody. By the way, I'm joking. You're getting married. Anybody here getting married, thinking about getting married? You tell them what they're getting up front, or else you are guilty of a terrible scam. Let them know what they're getting. But now back to Samson, on the other hand. She didn't know his secret, but his parents knew. He stays married to her long, she's going to find it out. She's going to find out a whole bunch of things, and sure enough, she did. What happened was Samson made a bet with some of his Philistine friends. They could not think of the answer to save their life, so they went to this girl, this Philistine girl, and they said, hey, find out the secret of Samson's riddle. Find out the secret of his riddle. And so, in a way that women are often even better at, she managed to pull that information out of Samson as she stroked his hair and whispered sweet nothings in his ear. And in that situation, he whispered to her the answer to the riddle. He lost the bet, but then he made this interesting comment to the Philistines after they got the secret riddle answer from his wife. Verse 18b, it's one of my favorite scriptures. If you'd not plowed with my heifer, you'd not have found out my riddle. She'd betrayed him. She'd betrayed him. And this could have been a learning experience. It had to hurt. Now, you know it hurt that his girlfriend, the first woman he ever really loved, she cheated him. She let him down. But sometimes the biggest letdowns, the biggest disappointments in life can be tremendous learning opportunities if we open up and learn them. Samson did not. Instead, Samson just got mad. And he kept going and going and going. And so, not long after that, the Bible says he met a second woman. A woman who was going to ask him a different secret. Who was going to ask something he certainly should not have told. But here's how it went. Judges 16, verses 4 through 6. After this, it came about that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, entice him and see where his great strength lies and how we may overpower him, that we may bind him to afflict him. Then we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength is and how you may be bound to afflict you. And the rest of that story is so well known that I'm not going to take any more of this particular sermon time to tell you how it turned out. You could almost guess it if you never heard or read it before. He told her all his heart. He shared his secret. And with that secret, she destroyed him. How did it happen? How did it happen? Well, obviously, he was confused about this don't ask, don't tell thing. But you could also say that Samson was a wimpy strong man. A wimpy strong man in that he was both wimpy and strong. Physically, he was strong. Emotionally and spiritually, wimpy. Very immature. And one mark of immaturity, emotional immaturity, spiritual immaturity, is that the immature person does not know how to set clear boundaries about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. This is how far I go. Do not ask me to go any further. This is what I'm willing to do for you. Don't ask me to do any more. Here's what I am going to tell you because this is what you need to know. But beyond that, you need to mind your own business. Our hearts have to be guarded sometimes. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. This one will not be on the screen, but I want to read it to you. It says, "Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life." Guard your heart. You've got to guard your heart from controlling people. You got to guard from manipulative people. You got to guard your heart from people who do not respect you and only want to take advantage of you. You got to guard your heart with people who say they love you when in reality they just need you. They need something that you are offering. Samson didn't have the ability to discern this sort of thing. He had no boundaries. And therefore, when somebody began pushing into a part of his life where they had no business going, he just let them keep coming. No boundaries. He did not guard his heart. You know, how would you know whether or not you have the right kind of boundaries in your life? Let me just give you a few hints. For one thing, if you feel guilty whenever you say no, you probably don't have healthy boundaries. If you feel guilty whenever you have to tell somebody no, or if you say yes because you know you'll feel guilty if you don't have a boundary there. Good fences make good neighbors. You know where your property ends and theirs begins. And if they come over that boundary, they're doing what? Trespassing, which is another word for sin. Somebody comes over into a part of your life where they got no business being. We're talking sexually. We're talking emotionally. Somebody crosses into places they got no business being. You got to say no and not feel guilty. Another sign that you may be prone to people like Delilah, who will destroy you, is that when you're around them, you wind up saying things and doing things that you wouldn't normally do because it goes against your character, your integrity. It's like when you're interacting with this person, they bring out bad stuff in you that you wouldn't normally do or say. Another sign that you're in a bad relationship is if you find yourself giving too much. You just give this person, like Samson did, you give them whatever they want. You tell them whatever they want to know, as Samson did, just so they won't go away and leave you. That's the reason Samson finally caved in and told Delilah the secret of his strength. She left him. And he didn't make it 24 hours without her before he begged her to come back, and he told her all his heart. Be careful when you find yourself doing and saying things you know you shouldn't do or say because you're afraid they won't like you if you don't, that they won't approve of you. Whether you're 15 or 59, watch out for this, because it happens at every stage of life. Whenever you allow people to intrude into the secret parts of your life where they have no business being, what happens is they chip away at your self-respect, and you forget who you are. That's what happened to Samson. He forgot who he was and why he was here, all because of these women with whom he had no boundaries. He had all the wrong kind of friends and none of the right kinds of friends. You know what? If you're going to live the Christian life, you're going to have the right kind of friends. Let me say this very carefully. I've been talking a lot today about how certain things need to be a secret. Don't blab everything to everybody. Yes, yes, yes. That is such a big part of this message. But listen, don't swing to the other extreme. Because there are some of us in this room who never share anything about our personal lives with anybody. That's just as destructive. You need godly friends, people who can be trusted with your secrets. Oh, I would hate to live in a world where there was nobody I could talk honestly with. Nobody I could just really bare my soul to. What a lonely life it would be. What a tragic life it would be. That's how people shrivel up and die spiritually and emotionally. You need godly friends that you can share your secrets with. And some people are right about now saying, I don't have any of those kind of friends. Listen very carefully. You live in Mena, Arkansas, and you don't have any godly friends, it's because you don't want any godly friends. Don't feel sorry for yourself. They are here. They are in this room. They are willing, and many of them anxious to be part of your life, to share your secrets, your heartaches, to lift you up when the world pushes you down. Those people are all around you. But you got to open up to them. You got to let them in. Some of us need to learn to keep our mouths shut. Others need to learn how to open it.